Hello everyone, Revan619 here. Today I'm going to be talking about Haymar, who is the Cataclysm Jungle Fighter soldier that joined you and is your heavy weapon specialist. Now, whether or not heavy weapon specialist is going to be something that is tied to his origin or to maybe change something accessible to everyone in the full release, we'll have to see. But for now, as we see him coming into the game, his talents that he gets here is heavy weapon efficiency, and he also has firearm mastery. So this is going to be stuff based on his soldier stuff, and his first specialization that he takes is the burst fire specialist. The character's burst attack costs -1 AP. This cannot be less than 1. Now, as for his abilities and what he has access to here, so the Cataclysm Jungle Fighter will allow him to scale based on Haymar's tough bonus. This is going to be something that you take where if, say, one of your characteristics is going to scale on, say, on agility, and that is less than your toughness, you'd switch it over to that, so that way you can scale whatever that is from there. So if we have a look here, there's nothing here that's got any scaling. Same for here, his lock and load isn't going to be on that, so it's going to be when we look at some of the abilities that we'll actually start looking at some of that. Another one is the kill zone. Haymar's ability range is increased by number of lock and load stack, does not affect that. So this is stuff that can be increased to any of his abilities here, but again, he doesn't really have any range on any of these abilities, so it's not going to be one we can use at the moment. When attacking, Haymar's gains weapons rate of 5% bonus damage reduction for 1 round, so this one is going to be quite useful. If we pop that on his burst attacks, then he'll actually take less damage. Another one is rate of fire. All weapons increased by 25% minimum for 1 round. So we're going to want to use this on something we're going to attack with, but again, we don't have any abilities we have access to. So let's jump into the level up screen and have a look, see what's going on with Haymar, because other than starting with a knife that he can't really use because he has no weapon skill, he has very high ballistic skill, fairly low agility actually, but pretty good toughness. It is interesting to see where it's all coming in here, but he also does have some good perception. So when we jump over to the level up screen, some of the abilities that we have access to is dash, so we can get ourselves out of trouble and not provoke attacks of opportunity. This one is actually very good if you get pushed a lot. Another one is exploit surroundings. Until the start of the next turn, whilst the soldier is in cover, attacks made against them automatically hit their cover. Damage dealt to it is increased by 50%. So this way is, well, it's a way you can guarantee that hits that. And Revelant Slaughter. Until the end of their turn, the soldier deals 20 plus 2 times agility bonus % more range damage to enemies within the soldier's influence. So this is going to be 2 cells within them. That's obviously going to be for area weapons, and this is going to be something that you can change to scale of toughness based on that modification. The one that I think is best is absolutely dash, because if you get pushed, it gets you out of trouble, but you do need exploit surroundings if you want to use some of those modifications. Now, if we have a look over here, his burst fire specialist, the last shot of burst will do extra damage based on his rate of fire and his agility bonus. So again, this is going to be something that's scaled from agility, but we can't modify this one because it's not an ability or an action. Now, burst fire interdiction. If a target is hit by a rate of fire divided by 2 or more shots from a burst attack, it must pass strength tenacity test with a +30 bonus or become immobilized for 1 round. Now, immobilized obviously stops people moving, which is pretty good. Now, another great one here is burst fire overdrive. This is one I go for first. Burst attacks gain 25% rate of fire, minimum 1. Yeah, exceptional. From his Cataclysm Jungle Fighter origin, Haymar has chance to ignore penalties morale equal to lock and load level, so that can go up to 50%. Whenever a penalty is ignored, Haymar gains +2 morale instead. Pretty nice to see there. Another one here is Haymar gets his ballistic score defense whilst wielding a heavy weapon and having no cover, so you could be encouraged to fight outside of cover, and this is going to be your dodge bonus. Another one is Haymar throws a grenade. A frag grenade appears in the same slot. So this one is a way that you can use grenades and then you can restock them. So grenades are quite good at this one because they can interrupt enemy concentration abilities. This one coming in here, at the start of his turn, Haymar regains wounds equal to 38% of damage he has taken over the round. If he's about to fall unconscious due to damage over time effects, he remains in combat with 1 wound. So this is going to be based on his toughness bonus. So they kind of want you to make a tough base soldier, which is very interesting. Now, the talents that we have access to for soldier for the alpha is each time a soldier's burst shots hit the same target, deals 6% more damage than the previous one. So this is a way that over combat that it will constantly increase and stack damage. It's going to be something that's going to be pretty nice over the course of a combat. Another one is home positions. For 1 round, the soldier gains +1 defense for each cell between the soldier's position at the start of the turn and the position at the end of it. Not going to be the best one for Haymar when you're going to be limiting your movement. Soldier can now make attacks 2-handed ranged weapons whilst in melee range. Fantastic. And another one here, for each enemy hit by the soldier's ranged area attack, this damage dealt to the soldier's next area attack is reduced by 5%. Now, stuff like obviously burst fire overdrive, having rate of fire increases tied to the archetype actually fixes the issue Allfar had around gear. I'm going to grab burst fire overdrive for the first one. As we come into his second side here, there is a lot of fantastic things we can take here. Because I didn't take the melee range one, I'm actually going to grab Master Marksman just for the sake of it. And when it comes to the upgrades, so Rapid Fire is currently bugged and it's not very good. It just fires shots and random things, can hit a lot of cover and isn't the best. Whereas Run and Gun, however, will allow you to shoot twice and second shot will take, well, the shots deal 25% damage, but it's a way to get a double set of shots up. One of the upgrades will actually remove the damage penalty, and the other one here was each enemy hit must pass the metal test with a 5 times number of enemy hits penalty or have their morale reduced by 3. Now that's not going to be the best one for him because burst fire is now a single target attack rather than a multiple target attack, so you're going to probably want to be going for this one, and it means that your burst fire is going to be very single target damage, so you will probably want to eventually invest in a good area weapon for Haymar to help him in close combat. Unfortunately, shotguns got a big nerf and they lost their knockback, so they don't really have a role that they replaced here. But yes, like I said, the rapid fire ones, yeah, it's meant to give you 100% extra rate of fire, but 8 shot in the burst will go somewhere random, so that works a little bit like how it does in Rogue Trader, though I would like it to be straight line based on over penetration and basically to make it work more like Rogue Trader, but I'm guessing that's probably going to need a little bit of work in the future. Now, when we look at our specializations here, attack still 30% more damage to enemy armor. That's pretty huge. We got dual weapon specialist. Carrots can attack with a second weapon in their current weapon set, disregarding the attack limit per turn. Now, this is going to be the start of making a mixed attacker, though, especially because you get that +5 ballistic weapon skill coming in here. But it's not going to be the best early on. Heavyweight armor specialist, that means that you can eventually build Haymar to be a very heavy frontline fighter, especially if you're taking that extra dodge when not in cover and then putting heavy armor on top of it. That's going to be something that's pretty good. Or you could be going to increase his agility as well as his toughness and going with medium armor specialist. Now this one, the character gains 15 defense if they wear medium armor. I would probably go this way. Tactical movement specialist is something that one of his companions use, but I think for Haymar you're probably going to want to get anti-armor specialist and medium armor specialist first. Now depending on which one you get first is going to be up to you. Just for the sake of this video, I'm just grabbing anti-armor specialist. Now, the modifications that we get here is the target suffers 5+ perception bonus % additional damage to its arm for 2 rounds. So that's a pretty good one. This one, as you can see, it shows you what your eligible abilities are. So we got no abilities Haymar for this one. This one, the target ally deals 8% more damage to enemies with more than 0 armor durability for 2 rounds. Now, that can go to exploit surroundings, but we're not going to be able to get it on much else. And we are planning to use that with his rate of fire one. But over here, the anti-armor frontal assault. So this one, the target must pass an agility's reflex test or suffer per bonus additional damage to its armor. That's going to be a pretty nutty one here. We've also got stuff in Burst Fire Specialist. The target suffers 5% more damage for a round. We don't really have anything for that, and these ones obviously want to go into exploit surroundings. You can also see which ones you've already put modifications on. So yes, just getting extra damage coming into armor from that is going to be pretty good. Thinking about that, actually, if I grab Medium Armor Specialist, this might actually do more for us, considering some of that. So if we wanted to do extra armor damage, we can get this one, and we can throw that onto Run and Gun, and we can also use the Ray of Fire. So I'm actually going to take Burst Fire Piercing Volley here, and we can have a look to see what that's going to do here. And then if I take another one here, we can either get the +22 defense when wielding heavy weapons whilst not in cover or something else, but I think that's going to be a pretty nice one to try out. As for when it comes to skills, it looks like Haymar has got some really good resistance here, and he's also got some fairly good awareness, though he's not the best on either of them. But reflexes is another one that we could boost up here just for the sake of the video, but when it comes to min-maxing skills, yeah, that's going to be a whole video series in itself. And as for another modification, we have a look at what we might want to be able to move and upgrade here. So these are going to be talents coming in from Soldier. Soldier has some very interesting modifications, such as just giving us blanket more damage, along with some other things coming in here. But I will take Unstoppable Onslaught just so we can sort of show that off. And I will grab Dash. Now, in the previous video, I didn't actually show off much about Catacomb Jungle Fighter coming in and doing some things, but I did want to show it off for this video. So if I just look to see if there's anything that we can really want to modify, I still don't think there's anything for Steward for just now because I didn't take any abilities around that. So what I am going to do here is I am going to put on some of these targeting attacks, just so we can sort of see what we're doing here. And we're going to see quite a bit of extra damage coming in here, so we're going to see some fun things. I'm going to go into the same combat I did before just so we can show off a little bit more about Haymar's role in the combat here. So the intention of this video isn't going to be a sort of combat tutorial or anything like that. If you do want to see that, do pop on some of my complete live streams. But as you can see, with some of these bonuses coming in here, normally Haymar's defense would be 4, but because we went for the heavy gunner specialist and the medium armor specialist, we've increased his defense to 41. Yeah, this is going to be pretty nutty and something that we're going to just be able to throw him out into cover. As you can see, I've not leveled up anyone else. This was obviously just so I could quickly show off some of the way that you can really turbo boost his rate of fire. So let's pop Haymar just up front, a little bit out of cover, and we'll just see what we can encourage enemies to do. So as before, the enemies are coming up to set up for some of their little acts here, and I'm going to mostly skip around just trying to get Haymar set up to go, but one thing I will do is try to interrupt some of these enemies. The reason for attempting to interrupt the enemies is just so they don't close the door. So, using our extra attack economy, we are going to give an extra turn to Haymar here, who can fire in melee because of the way some of this works. Now, this burst fire has a rate of fire of 9, but obviously if I was able to use it from cover, I'd be able to increase that. So if I just for now pop on run and gun, because it will allow us to fire twice and increase our rate of fire during that time, you can see he's going to want to do an obscene amount of damage here. Even if you only hit 1 or 2 shots, yeah, these heavy bolters, they do a lot. So if we pop Haymar into cover here, we'll use his lock and load. At the moment, you can see that his rate of fire is currently at 9. If I use his exploit surroundings, yeah, that has now been a boost to a 12. So we will be able to do quite a large amount of damage to many targets here. There's probably going to be nothing that survives. Because this is a single target based attack, if we hit Cog, that could do a lot, but chances are we're not going to do that. He says right before targeting the hell out of Cog. But yes, so that's pretty much going to be Haymar's role. As you can see, it's very single shot orientated, and as he got off a heroic action here, we could potentially go for another set of shots for deciding who we want to target. This time I'm actually going to move it away from Cog just so we don't blast him, and well, the damage it wants to get up to is potentially a 468 burst here. Single shot annihilating that guy. Basically, the way soldiers have changed is they are incredibly strong single target shots, and like even our rate of fire is now up to 12 here. If we went on for say our rapid fire instead, it would try to fire 18, but like I said, all of those shots would go to a random target in there, so chances are you want to try and target an individual and then have the chance that other shots are going to go to other places. So let's look at some high-level gameplay of what Haymar does. I'm going to use the same encounter as I used before with the officer, though I'm doing audio not live as I'm playing through it this time, so it makes that a little bit easier. With Haymar, your options are to use run and gun to try and hit a single target, or to use rapid fire to just hit a group of enemies. Since the hotfix, it no longer just targets cover randomly, but you're kind of rolling the dice if anything's even going to hit, but when you fire into a group of trash mobs, chances are you are going to kill a couple of them. Haymar, like with the operative in the previous officer video, is going to be a fantastic target for your officer abilities and extra turn economy. As long as you keep his lock and load selected, you can keep up his rate of fire without really taking down too many issues. And because he does generate a lot of morale and kills, chances are you are going to wipe probably more enemies than the operative was, even though at certain distances it's going to be far less reliable. Cover can be a bit of a problem, but at the end of the day, you can just start trying to burst through it. Because your movement gets locked to 1, dash is going to be very useful to keep moving, unless you're willing to give up that rate of fire that we had there. So because I've still got the option for 1 rate of fire, I'd rather just dash out 3 cells and then move that 1 cell that I'm allowed to move anyway to make that 4. That way I don't lose my 50% rate of fire increase. I do need to test. There's one of his talents that can increase his range. I need to see if that applies to burst fire itself. Now, when it can get a little bit sticky is when you have lots of allies surrounding the enemy once they're in close. In those situations, you might want to either maybe not have an area weapon, but maybe put on something else at single target. It'll remain to be seen what his best secondary is going to be. But as you can see here, I'm just still trying to blast through the cover so I can get this guy who's up on top. And the potential damage that Haymar has at 408 seems really good. Overall though, burst seems much weaker. It has a much higher chance of missing because it's no longer auto hit like it was in Rogue Trader. Now, sometimes you are going to have to turn off lock and load, which means you are going to lose some of your stacked up rate of fire, but it's okay because you can easily get that back later when you then start blasting more enemies. As you can see, chances to hit sometimes are not going to be the best, but as long as you can get a good number of them, you are still going to do quite high damage. Sometimes you are going to want to just take a little bit of sacrifice just so you can get into some better positions, but that's completely okay. And especially, like I said before, with how quickly Haymar generates his rate of fire, you're going to be able to get heroics out very quickly and very reliably. Whilst he's not going to be as impressive as Argenta is in Rogue Trader at first look, this seems to be mostly because of how burst fire has been changed to be a lot more balanced than it was in Rogue Trader. But as you can see here, he's still just clearing through, and he's doing very well with doing so. Just slowly moving up, absolutely clearing enemies, and because of his really high defenses, he doesn't need to worry about cover as much as some of the other squishy companions. But just to give off a last little test, let's see what he can do going up at trying to blast into a demon in the late parts of this encounter. So whilst a lot of dodging is happening, once the hits do start going through, because of the extra damage from bolt weapons, you will see some exceptional damage coming in here. And potentially once injuries have been applied, even at high morale, he still wants to do 320 damage to this demon. But it just depends on how many of those shots actually hit. Not a bad showing. Now, whilst I didn't read you every talent, every specialization, every ability, and every modification that you can make here, that's something that has been saved exclusively for Inquisitor Tier members over on the channel. But to give a conclusion of Haymar, he has a lot of really good talents going for him. He'll be able to stack very high defense to try and dodge enemy attacks. He'll be able to have ways of medium armor that he can sort of regenerate his armor, though it's not going to be to the highest unless you did want to specialize into heavy armor. And a lot of his abilities are going to be based around increasing his rate of fire and just doing incredibly high single target damage. Hopefully, with a secondary melter, he'll be able to do reliable armor strip with some good secondary areas on that. But overall, the burst fires seem absolutely crazy. I would like to see rapid fire get a slight buff when it comes to actually landing those shots, because it was a bit bugged and the hotfix they put out to fix it didn't quite do that. But potentially you'll be able to use rapid fire to fire into crowds of enemies to try and one-shot mooks, and then you'll use run and gun to target elite enemies to try and infinitely gun down one person. Some of the rapid fire weapons you can get for Haymar will allow you to shoot in melee, or you can just take upgrades to shoot in melee anyway. So overall, I think he's going to be an incredibly strong member of the team, whilst never going to compete with Argenta Tier if they're going to go the direction that they're going when it comes to the way that they're balancing this. He will still be incredibly strong. He'll be probably very useful to be going out and just lone target gunning down enemies, whilst you then have your officer focus on buffing targets, buffing your operatives and then moral stripping their targets, so that's how they can get all their bonus damage in. Because otherwise an operative's only going to do 20 damage whilst you do 200, whereas potentially you could do 400 damage, but doing 400 damage to a single target from a burst fire weapon isn't going to be wanting to what you want to be doing that. But that's all I've got time to say. Let me know what your thoughts on Haymar so far, if you managed to play the alpha, or if not, if you're looking forward to trying him out when you get there. Bye for now.